The phone rang at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, jolting me awake from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. My mother's voice cracked through the speaker, desperate and pleading in a way that made my stomach drop. She was crying about a $500,000 loan they claimed I co-signed for my sister Emma 3 years ago. I sat up in bed, completely confused, because I'd never seen any paperwork, never agreed to anything, and hadn't spoken to Emma since she moved to California, chasing some startup dream that probably crashed and burned like all her other schemes. My parents kept insisting it was my moral obligation, as the successful older brother, to fix this mess. My blood turned to ice when they mentioned foreclosure papers and bankruptcy proceedings. Something sinister was happening in my family, and I knew tonight's dinner confrontation would expose secrets that would completely shatter everything I thought I knew about the people I trusted most. I threw on jeans and a sweater, my hands shaking as I grabbed my car keys. The 45-minute drive to my childhood home in suburban Columbus gave me time to process what my parents had just dumped on me. $500,000. That wasn't pocket change or some minor family loan. That was serious money that could destroy lives. My accounting firm had been my life's work, built from nothing through 16-hour days and careful financial planning. Every penny I'd earned came from legitimate clients who trusted me with their businesses. I'd never been reckless with money, never co-signed for anyone, and certainly never agreed to guarantee $500,000 for my younger sister's latest get-rich-quick scheme. Emma had always been the dreamer in our family, the one with grand plans that never quite worked out. Growing up, she'd cycle through obsessions every few months. First, it was becoming a famous singer, then starting a fashion line, then real estate investing, then cryptocurrency trading. 3 years ago, she'd called me breathless with excitement about some revolutionary app idea that would change how people shared photos online. She'd packed up her beat-up Honda Civic and driven cross-country to San Francisco, convinced she'd be the next tech billionaire. The last real conversation we'd had was maybe 6 months after she moved. She'd sounded stressed, asking if I could lend her a few $1,000s to cover rent while she waited for investor meetings. I'd sent her $2,000 with the understanding it was a gift, not a loan. After that, our contact became sporadic text messages, then holiday cards, then nothing. I pulled into the driveway of the modest ranch house where I'd grown up. The lawn needed mowing, and the gutters sagged slightly on one corner. My father Harold had always been meticulous about home maintenance, so seeing these small signs of neglect worried me almost as much as the phone call. My parents met me at the door, looking haggard and older than their 62 years. My mother Janet's eyes were red from crying, and my father's usually perfect posture had collapsed into a defeated slouch. They ushered me into the dining room where a manila envelope sat ominously on the oak table my grandfather had built. "Foster, thank goodness you came," my mother said, wringing her hands. "We didn't know what else to do. The bank called today saying they need payment arrangements immediately or they'll start foreclosure proceedings." My father cleared his throat nervously. "Son, I know this is a shock, but we need to discuss your obligations regarding Emma's business loan. You guaranteed the debt, and now that she's having difficulties, the responsibility falls to you." I stared at them, both feeling like I'd walked into someone else's nightmare. "What obligations? What guarantee? I've never signed anything related to Emma's business, or anyone else's for that matter." Janet's voice rose to a near panic. "But the papers show your signature, your social security number, everything. The bank has documentation proving you co-signed for $500,000 3 years ago." My father reluctantly slid the manila envelope across the table. "We've been trying to handle this quietly, hoping Emma would resolve things on her own. But the situation has gotten beyond our control." With my accountant's eye for detail, I examined every page carefully. The loan documents appeared legitimate at first glance. There was my name, Foster Mitchell Crawford, spelled correctly. My social security number was accurate. The address listed was my apartment from graduate school. But something about the paperwork felt wrong, though I couldn't immediately identify what bothered me. The signature looked like mine with the same distinctive way I crossed my T's and looped my R's. But as I studied it more closely, memories began flooding back. 3 years ago, during the dates on these documents, I'd been in London completing my master's degree in international accounting. I'd spent 6 months abroad from February through August, working with European firms and studying global financial regulations. This origination date, I said, pointing to the loan paperwork. March 15th, 3 years ago. I was studying in London that entire semester. I couldn't have signed anything in Columbus, Ohio during that time period. The color drained from both my parents' faces. They exchanged a look that told me everything I needed to know even before my mother broke down sobbing. Emma forged it, Janet admitted through her tears. She forged your signature, but Foster, please, you have to understand, she's family. Family comes first. We've already mortgaged everything trying to help her. If you don't pay this loan, we'll lose the house, our retirement, everything we've worked for our entire lives. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not just Emma's fraud, but my parents' willingness to ask me to pay for it. I sat back in the chair where I'd eaten thousands of family dinners, feeling like a stranger in my own childhood home. I refused to even consider paying the fraudulent debt and demanded the complete truth about Emma's situation. What my parents revealed over the next 2 hours painted a picture far worse than I'd imagined. Emma's revolutionary app had never existed beyond a hastily created website and some stolen stock photos. Within 6 months of arriving in California, she'd burned through the entire loan amount on a luxury apartment in Marin County, a leased BMW convertible, and elaborate parties designed to attract potential investors who never materialized. She'd been living a complete fantasy funded by money stolen in my name. My father admitted they'd known about the loan problems for over a year, but had hoped to resolve everything without involving me. They'd already taken a second mortgage on their house, emptied their retirement savings accounts, and borrowed $50,000 against Harold's life insurance policy. The stress had triggered my father's hypertension and irregular heartbeat, forcing him to take medical leave from his job at the insurance company where he'd worked for 37 years. What Harold hadn't told Janet was that his medical leave had turned into termination 2 months ago. His health issues, combined with missing work to deal with Emma's crisis, had made him unreliable in his employer's eyes. At 62, finding another job with comparable salary and benefits seemed impossible. Janet had been working extra shifts at the medical center's billing department, but her income alone couldn't cover their existing expenses, let alone the crushing debt payments they'd taken on to protect Emma. They'd been surviving on credit cards and hope watching their entire life's work disappear month by month. She promised she was turning things around, Janet said, her voice hollow with exhaustion. Every time we talked to her, she had another plan, another opportunity just around the corner. We kept believing because we needed to believe. She's our daughter. I asked to see Emma's childhood bedroom, which my parents had left essentially untouched since she moved to California. What I found there made my blood run cold. Hidden in her desk drawers were business cards for 3 different fake companies, printed emails from non-existent investors praising her business acumen, and receipts for luxury purchases that told the story of someone living far beyond stolen means. There were receipts from high-end restaurants in San Francisco's financial district bills, from exclusive spas in Napa Valley, and credit card statements showing regular purchases at designer boutiques. Emma had been living like a tech executive while funding her lifestyle with money fraudulently obtained in my name. But the most disturbing discovery was a notebook filled with what appeared to be character studies and practice signatures. Emma had pages of my signature repeated dozens of times, along with notes about my mannerisms, speech patterns, and personal history. She'd clearly spent considerable time perfecting her ability to impersonate me. My phone rang while I was still processing these revelations. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize with a Los Angeles area code. Foster Crawford. The voice was professional, authoritative. Speaking. This is Detective Ryan Shaw with Sterling Investigations. I've been hired by multiple creditors to locate your sister Emma regarding several outstanding debts and possible fraud charges. I understand you might be experiencing some financial issues related to her activities. My heart pounded as Detective Shaw explained that Emma wasn't just hiding from my family. She'd been arrested in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago for running investment scams under the assumed name Madison Cross. The loan fraud involving my identity was apparently just one piece of a much larger criminal enterprise that had defrauded dozens of victims out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Your sister has been operating several fake investment companies, Detective Shaw continued. She's particularly fond of targeting elderly investors with promises of cryptocurrency returns and exclusive tech startup opportunities. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office is building a federal case that could involve charges across multiple states. The room spun around me as I realized the full scope of what Emma had become. This wasn't just a family member making poor choices. This was a calculated criminal who had used our blood relationship as cover for identity theft and fraud. My parents stood in Emma's doorway, watching my face as I absorbed this information. When I hung up the phone, I could see they already knew some of what I'd just learned. "You knew she was arrested, Ron," I said. "It wasn't a question." Harold nodded miserably. "She called us from jail. Said it was all a misunderstanding that jealous competitors were trying to frame her. She begged us not to involve police or lawyers because it would only make things worse for everyone. And you believed her." "We wanted to believe her," Janet whispered. "She's our little girl Foster. We remember her bringing us flowers she picked from the neighbor's garden when she was 5. We remember her practicing piano for hours because she wanted to make us proud. Somewhere inside that person she's become our real daughter still exists." I looked around Emma's bedroom, seeing it now as a crime scene rather than nostalgic childhood memories. The parents who had raised me to value honesty and responsibility had become enablers in their daughter's descent into criminal behavior. Their misguided loyalty hadn't protected Emma. It had enabled her to hurt more people and dig herself deeper into legal trouble. The worst part was realizing how thoroughly Emma had manipulated all of us. She'd used our family's love and trust as weapons against us, turning our greatest strength into our most dangerous vulnerability. Detective Shaw agreed to meet me the next morning at a coffee shop near downtown Columbus. He was a former federal agent who'd started his own investigation firm specializing in financial crimes, and his files on Emma's activities painted a picture of systematic criminal behavior that had escalated over several years. Madison Cross is just one of the identities she's been using. Detective Shaw explained, spreading photographs and documents across the small table. We've also found evidence of her operating as Emma Richardson Madison Stevens and at least 2 other aliases. Each identity corresponds to different types of fraud schemes. Emma had been running what investigators called affinity fraud, targeting specific communities where she could build trust quickly. In retirement communities, she'd presented herself as a financial advisor, specializing in helping seniors protect their savings from inflation. Among young professionals in Silicon Valley, she'd posed as a venture capitalist with exclusive access to pre-IPO investments. The sophistication of her operations was staggering. She'd created fake websites, printed professional marketing materials, and even rented office space in prestigious buildings to conduct meetings with potential victims. Her approach was methodical research targets, thoroughly identify their specific financial fears and desires, then present customized investment opportunities that seemed too good to pass up. Your sister is highly intelligent and extremely manipulative, Detective Shaw said. She studies people the way a scientist studies specimens. She knows exactly what emotional buttons to push to override their logical thinking. My parents had known more than they'd initially admitted. Emma had contacted them regularly from California, not to maintain family relationships, but to gather information she could use in her schemes. She'd ask detailed questions about my business, my clients, and my personal life, under the guise of sisterly interest. Janet had innocently provided Emma with information about my daily routines, my girlfriend Sarah's work schedule at Columbus General Hospital, and even details about my business associates. Emma had used this intelligence to enhance her credibility when approaching potential victims claiming personal connections to successful Ohio business people. Harold revealed that Emma had specifically asked him to photograph documents from my visits home, including mail that might contain business information. He'd thought she was just proud of my success and wanted to share stories with her California friends. Instead, she'd been gathering intelligence to make her fraud schemes more convincing. The private investigator's files contained evidence that Emma had attempted to access my business bank accounts using information gathered during family visits. She'd contacted my primary bank claiming to be calling on my behalf about account transfers using personal details only a family member would know. Fortunately, my business account required additional security protocols that prevented unauthorized access. Detective Shaw showed me copies of emails Emma had sent to my clients, introducing herself as my business partner and asking for confidential financial information under the pretense of conducting routine account reviews. Most of my clients had ignored these communications, but 2 had nearly provided sensitive data before calling to verify her legitimacy. The identity theft involving your signature on the loan documents is actually minor compared to some of her other activities, Detective Shaw explained. She's facing potential federal charges for mail fraud, wire fraud, securities violations, and elder abuse. The combined sentences could exceed 20 years in federal prison. But the most shocking revelation came when Detective Shaw showed me evidence that my family wasn't Emma's first target. She'd been perfecting her family manipulation techniques on other successful siblings across the country. The investigator had identified 6 other cases where Emma's crew had approached families with troubled adult children offering to help rehabilitate the problematic family member in exchange for financial support and information about successful siblings. Your sister works with a network of accomplices, Detective Shaw continued. They identify families with specific dynamics, one successful child, one troubled child, and parents who feel guilty about the disparity. Then they exploit those family bonds to commit various forms of fraud. Emma had been connected to a forger named Marcus Webb, who specialized in creating false financial documents, and a social engineer named Brianna Chen, who researched potential victims through social media and public records. The 3 of them had been running coordinated schemes across California, Nevada, and Arizona for at least 2 years. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Foster, this is Emma. We need to talk immediately. Don't believe what people are telling you about me. I can explain everything. Meet me tonight at 7 p.m. at Miller's Steakhouse on High Street. Come alone and don't involve police or lawyers. There are things about this situation you don't understand. Your family's future depends on how you handle the next 24 hours." I showed the message to Detective Shaw, who immediately recognized the manipulation tactics. "She's trying to regain control of the narrative," he said. "The fact that she's out on bail and contacting you directly suggests she's either desperate or planning something more aggressive." The text message proved Emma was back in Ohio, which meant the danger had escalated from theoretical to immediate. She knew I'd been talking to investigators, and her message carried subtle threats about my family's safety. Detective Shaw strongly advised against meeting Emma alone. But I realized this might be the only opportunity to get direct answers about the full extent of her crimes. More importantly, I needed to protect my parents from further manipulation and ensure Emma couldn't continue using our family relationships to hurt innocent people. The web Emma had woven around our family was far more complex and dangerous than any of us had realized. But now that I understood the true scope of her criminal behavior, I was determined to help bring her to justice, regardless of the emotional cost to our family relationships. Against Detective Shaw's strong objections, I decided to meet Emma at Miller's Steakhouse, but not without precautions. I wore a small recording device and arranged for Detective Shaw to maintain visual surveillance from the parking lot. My goal was to gather evidence of her extortion attempts while protecting myself from whatever scheme she was planning. Emma arrived 15 minutes late, making a dramatic entrance that commanded attention from other diners. She'd transformed herself completely since I'd last seen her 3 years ago. Gone was the enthusiastic young woman in thrift store clothes and sneakers. This person wore a tailored black suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary designer jewelry that caught the restaurant's ambient lighting and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms. She slid into the booth across from me with a smile that never reached her eyes. "Foster, you look good. Ohio Living clearly agrees with you. Though I hear you've been asking some interesting questions about my business activities." "Your business activities? Is that what we're calling identity theft and fraud now?" Emma laughed, a sound devoid of warmth or genuine amusement. "Identity theft. Foster, I'm hurt. We're family. Everything I've done has been for the benefit of our entire family. You just haven't been thinking big enough to see the larger picture." She opened a leather portfolio and spread documents across the table with the confidence of someone presenting a legitimate business proposal. What I saw made my stomach drop. These weren't just random papers. They were sophisticated forgeries designed to implicate me as a willing participant in her criminal schemes. "These documents show our business partnership agreements," Emma said casually, as if discussing the weather. "Email exchanges where you approved my use of your identity for various ventures. Bank records showing payments you received from my California operations. Text messages where you provided guidance on client approaches and investment strategies." I examined the papers, recognizing the same attention to detail that had made her loan forgeries initially convincing. The email addresses looked legitimate, the dates corresponded to actual events in my life, and the language sounded like my typical communication style. Someone without expertise in document analysis might find these fabrications completely believable. Every signature, every email, every transaction has been carefully documented, Emma continued. "If this situation becomes public, these papers will create reasonable doubt about your innocence. Prosecutors love cases where they can show family conspiracies. Juries eat up stories about successful businessmen who use their troubled siblings as fronts for illegal activities." The sophistication of her blackmail attempt revealed months of preparation. She hadn't just been hiding in California. She'd been building a case designed to destroy my reputation and business if I refused to cooperate with her demands. "What do you want, Emma?" "The $500,000 loan payment, obviously, but also an additional $200,000 in what we'll call startup capital for my next venture. $700,000 total seems reasonable compensation for years of family support and business cooperation." "And if I refuse?" Emma's facade of sisterly warmth disappeared entirely. "Then these documents become public. Your clients receive copies showing your involvement in questionable investment schemes. The Ohio State Board of Accountancy investigates your professional ethics. Your girlfriend Sarah learns about your secret business activities through her colleagues at the hospital who happen to know some of my California associates." The threat became personal when Emma casually mentioned knowing Sarah's work schedule, her route home from the hospital, and even details about her morning jogging routine through Schiller Park. Emma had been gathering intelligence on everyone close to me, not just my business operations. "Sarah seems lovely," Emma said with fake sweetness. "It would be tragic if her career suffered because of her association with someone under federal investigation for financial crimes. Hospital administrators are very sensitive about staff members whose personal relationships might compromise their professional reputations." I realized Emma had become genuinely dangerous. This wasn't just about money anymore. She was willing to destroy innocent people's lives to protect herself, and fund her criminal lifestyle. The sister I'd grown up with had been completely consumed by the predator she'd chosen to become. You have 48 hours to arrange the transfer. Emma concluded gathering her forged documents. $700,000 to an account I'll specify. In exchange, these papers disappear forever, and I relocate to somewhere far from Ohio where I can start fresh without bothering our family again. And if I contact police, then everyone you care about suffers the consequences. Foster, I've spent 3 years learning how to destroy people's lives efficiently and thoroughly. Your parents, your girlfriend, your clients, your business reputation, I can unravel everything you've built faster than you can imagine. Don't test me on this. Emma stood to leave, then paused as if remembering something trivial. Oh, and Foster? I know you're recording this conversation. The device in your shirt pocket is admirable, but those recordings won't help you. Everything I've said tonight can be interpreted as a concerned sister trying to resolve a family financial dispute. No prosecutor would call this extortion based on what we've discussed. She walked away with the same confident stride she'd used entering the restaurant, leaving me sitting alone with the devastating realization that she'd anticipated every protective measure I'd taken. Emma had evolved from a troubled family member into a professional criminal who stayed several steps ahead of her victims and investigators. The most terrifying aspect wasn't her threats against me, but her casual willingness to harm innocent people like Sarah and my parents. Emma had crossed a line from which there might be no return, and I was the only person positioned to stop her from destroying more lives. But first I had to figure out how to protect everyone I cared about from someone who knew intimate details about their daily routines and vulnerabilities. Emma had turned our family bonds into weapons, and now I needed to find a way to disarm her without triggering the destruction she'd promised. The recording device had captured Emma's threats, but as she'd predicted, the content could be interpreted as family discussion rather than criminal extortion. Detective Shaw confirmed that while her behavior was highly suspicious, prosecutors would need more direct evidence to build a strong case. What shattered me completely was learning the full extent of my parents' involvement in Emma's intelligence gathering. Over the following 24 hours, as Detective Shaw's investigation deepened, the scope of their betrayal became clear. My mother had been photographing my personal mail during family visits, including bank statements, client correspondence, and business documents I'd left in their guest room. She'd convinced herself this was helping Emma feel connected to family success stories, not realizing she was providing intelligence for criminal schemes. Harold had used his spare key to my house to plant tracking software on my personal computer and copy files from my home office. During a weekend when I'd asked them to house sit while I attended a business conference in Chicago, he'd systematically photographed documents, copied computer files, and even installed a keylogger program that captured my passwords and browsing history. The software had been monitoring my activities for 6 months, giving Emma access to my business correspondence, personal emails, and online banking information. She'd been reading messages between Sarah and me, observing my client interactions, and tracking my daily routines through location data from my devices. They thought they were protecting both of you, Detective Shaw explained. Emma convinced them that you were in financial trouble, but too proud to ask for help. She claimed she needed information about your situation to arrange confidential assistance from her California investor contacts. My parents had installed a tracking application on my phone during our last family dinner, believing they were helping Emma coordinate surprise financial support for my business. Instead, they'd enabled Emma to monitor my location contacts and communications in real time. The ultimate betrayal came when I discovered they'd provided Emma with copies of my house key, office security codes, and even Sarah's work schedule and home address. Emma had requested this information under the pretense of planning a surprise visit to rebuild family relationships. But Emma's manipulation extended far beyond gathering intelligence. She'd contacted my largest client, Morrison Manufacturing, claiming to be conducting a routine background check for a potential business partnership. She'd raised questions about my financial stability and hinted at irregularities in my accounting practices that might warrant further investigation. My assistant Jessica called me in tears, reporting that someone had been making threatening phone calls to our office, claiming I owed money to California investors who were becoming impatient with delayed payments. The calls were sophisticated enough to reference actual client names and business details, making them seem potentially legitimate to anyone who answered. Sarah became collateral damage when Emma approached her at Columbus General Hospital, introducing herself as a financial consultant conducting due diligence for a potential partnership with my accounting firm. Emma asked inappropriate questions about my personal finances, spending habits, and whether I'd seemed stressed about money recently. "She seemed to know so much about you," Sarah told me later, clearly confused and concerned. She mentioned specific conversations we'd had, places we'd been together, even details about your family that only someone very close to you would know. But something about her felt wrong, almost predatory. Emma had been testing Sarah's loyalty and gathering additional intelligence about my personal life. The conversation had been designed to plant seeds of doubt about my honesty and financial stability while seeming like routine business inquiry. Detective Shaw's investigation revealed that Emma's crew had been running similar family manipulation schemes across multiple states. They'd identified at least 6 other families where troubled adult children had been used as entry points for targeting successful siblings. The pattern was always identical: gain family trust, gather intelligence, then exploit relationships to commit various forms of fraud. Emma's accomplices were Marcus Webb, a sophisticated forger who specialized in financial documents and identity theft, and Brianna Martinez, a social engineer who researched victims through social media, public records, and family interviews. The 3 of them had been operating as a coordinated criminal enterprise for over 2 years. "Your family wasn't their first target," Detective Shaw explained. "They've destroyed at least 6 other families using identical tactics. In each case, they exploited parents' love for troubled children to gain access to successful siblings who became victims of identity theft, extortion, or worse." The most devastating discovery came when investigators found evidence that Emma's crew had been planning to escalate beyond financial fraud. Hidden in Marcus Webb's apartment, police discovered detailed surveillance notes about my daily routines, maps of routes I traveled regularly, and what appeared to be preliminary plans for staging an apparent accident. The documents suggested they were preparing to eliminate me entirely, allowing Emma to inherit my business assets legally while avoiding the complications of ongoing extortion. My death would have been arranged to look like a tragic accident, perhaps involving my regular morning jogs through downtown Columbus or my weekly drives to visit clients in rural Ohio. Detective Shaw showed me photographs of surveillance equipment that had been placed near my apartment building and office, along with detailed notes about my schedule, habits, and security practices. Emma's operation had moved beyond fraud into potentially life-threatening territory. They were escalating because you'd become too risky to keep alive, Detective Shaw said grimly. Your accounting background made you more likely than most victims to discover their financial crimes. Rather than find new targets, they decided to eliminate the threat you represented to their operation. The realization that my own sister had been planning my murder while using our parents as unwitting accomplices pushed me beyond emotional breaking point. This wasn't about money or family dysfunction anymore. This was about surviving a criminal conspiracy that had infiltrated every aspect of my personal and professional life. But the discovery also provided the evidence prosecutors needed to build a comprehensive federal case. Emma and her crew had documented their criminal activities extensively, apparently confident that their family manipulation tactics would prevent victims from cooperating with law enforcement. They'd underestimated my willingness to sacrifice family relationships to protect innocent people and stop their criminal enterprise. The sister I'd once loved no longer existed. She'd been replaced by someone capable of planning my death to profit from my life's work. My emotional devastation transformed into cold, strategic determination. Emma had made a fatal error by underestimating my business acumen and ability to think several moves ahead. If she wanted to play psychological warfare using family bonds as weapons, I would show her what happened when someone with legitimate intelligence and resources decided to fight back. I met secretly with Detective Shaw and Assistant United States Attorney Jennifer Walsh to coordinate a comprehensive response that would protect innocent victims while gathering evidence for federal prosecution. The FBI had been tracking similar schemes across multiple states and was eager to develop a case that could shut down the entire criminal network. My role would be to pretend capitulation while actually serving as an undercover asset in a federal investigation. The plan required me to appear defeated and willing to pay Emma's demands while actually coordinating with law enforcement to document her crimes and identify her accomplices. "This is dangerous," Attorney Walsh warned. "Your sister's crew has shown willingness to escalate to violence when their other methods fail. If they discover you're cooperating with federal agents, your life will be in immediate danger." I agreed to wear sophisticated recording equipment and allow federal agents to monitor my communications with Emma. The FBI would track financial transactions to identify money laundering operations and locate assets that could be recovered for previous victims. The most challenging aspect was convincing my parents to cooperate with the investigation. Harold and Janet were devastated to learn the full scope of Emma's criminal behavior and their unwitting role in enabling her crimes, but they struggled to accept that their daughter was beyond redemption and required federal prosecution. "She used to bring me dandelions when she was little," my mother sobbed. "She'd pick them from the yard and tell me they were the most beautiful flowers in the world because they made me smile." How did that little girl become someone capable of planning her brother's murder? I showed them Detective Shaw's files, documenting other families Emma's crew had destroyed, elderly couples who'd lost life savings to fake investment schemes, young professionals whose careers had been ruined by identity theft, children who'd lost college funds to cryptocurrency scams that promised impossible returns. "Emma isn't the little girl who picked dandelions anymore," I told them gently. "She's become someone who destroys innocent people's lives for profit. If we don't stop her now, she'll continue hurting families until someone else stops her permanently." Harold and Janet agreed to participate in a controlled family meeting designed to gather evidence of Emma's extortion attempts and threats. The FBI would record the entire encounter while remaining hidden nearby to ensure everyone's safety. I contacted Emma and agreed to her financial demands, requesting a family dinner to discuss transfer arrangements. She was suspicious but agreed, probably confident that her psychological manipulation had broken my resistance. "Smart choice, big brother," Emma said during our phone conversation. "Family loyalty is more important than personal pride. This arrangement benefits everyone involved." The FBI equipped my parents' dining room with sophisticated recording equipment while agents positioned themselves throughout the neighborhood. Emma would be arrested immediately after providing evidence of her criminal enterprise and threats against family members. But as federal agents prepared their operation, Detective Shaw made a discovery that changed everything. Emma's crew hadn't just been planning financial fraud or even my murder. They'd been developing an even more sinister scheme that would have destroyed dozens of additional families. Hidden in Brianna Martinez's computer files, investigators found what appeared to be a database of hundreds of potential victims across the Midwest. The list included successful professionals whose family members showed signs of financial desperation, substance abuse, or other vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Emma's crew had been building a systematic operation to infiltrate and destroy middle-class families throughout Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and Pennsylvania. My family was just their testing ground for techniques they planned to use on a much larger scale. They were planning to franchise their family manipulation methods, Detective Shaw explained, train other criminal crews to identify vulnerable families, and exploit sibling relationships for identity theft and extortion. Your case was their proof of concept. The scope of their planned criminal enterprise was staggering. They'd identified over 300 families where successful adults might be vulnerable to manipulation through troubled relatives. Each family represented potential profits of hundreds of thousands of dollars through identity theft, investment fraud, and extortion schemes. But their extensive documentation would also provide federal prosecutors with evidence needed to pursue conspiracy charges that carried decades of prison time. Emma's meticulous record-keeping, designed to help her crew replicate successful techniques, would become the foundation for her eventual conviction. The family dinner meeting was scheduled for Saturday evening, giving federal agents time to coordinate with law enforcement agencies in multiple states. Emma's arrest would trigger simultaneous raids designed to shut down her entire criminal network and recover assets for victim restitution. As I prepared for what might be the last time I ever spoke with my sister, I reflected on how completely she'd transformed from the person I'd grown up loving. The Emma who'd shared secrets and dreams with me no longer existed. In her place was a predator who'd been planning my death while manipulating our parents' love to facilitate her crimes. But her downfall would also represent justice for all the families she'd destroyed and protection for the hundreds of potential victims in her database. Sometimes love requires making the hardest possible choices to protect innocent people from those we once trusted most. Saturday evening arrived with an early autumn chill that seemed fitting for what everyone knew would be our family's final act as we'd known it. Emma arrived at our parents' house driving a silver Mercedes she'd clearly acquired through her criminal activities, dressed in expensive clothes that probably cost more than my parents' monthly income. She entered the dining room, where we'd shared countless family meals, with the confidence of someone who believed she'd successfully manipulated everyone present. The recording equipment hidden throughout the room would capture every word of her self-incriminating statements. "Foster, I'm proud of you for making the right choice." Emma began spreading papers across the table. "These bank routing numbers will handle the $700,000 transfer. Once the money clears, all our family problems disappear forever." I played my role carefully, appearing defeated, while actually encouraging her to reveal details about her criminal operations. "Before I transfer anything, I need to understand what happens next. How do I know you won't come back asking for more money?" Emma's response exceeded our most optimistic expectations for gathering evidence. She described her criminal network in detail, explained how she'd used our parents to gather intelligence on me, and even bragged about the database of future victims her crew had compiled. "Foster, you think too small," she said with genuine contempt. "This Ohio situation was just practice. Marcus and Brianna have helped me identify hundreds of families across the Midwest where we can replicate these techniques. Each successful sibling represents hundreds of thousands in potential profit." She explained how they researched families through social media public records and targeted advertising designed to identify successful professionals with troubled relatives. The psychological manipulation techniques they'd perfected on our family would be franchised to other criminal crews operating in different states. "Your girlfriend Sarah was particularly useful for testing our intelligence gathering methods," Emma continued casually. "Amazing how much personal information hospital staff will share when approached by someone claiming to conduct routine background checks. My father, Harold, looked physically ill as Emma described using him to install tracking software and copy files from my home office. She showed no remorse for manipulating their parental love, treating their cooperation as simply another tool in her criminal toolkit. The beauty of family manipulation is that victims hesitate to involve law enforcement," Emma explained. "Parents especially will sacrifice anything to protect their children's reputations, even when those children are destroying innocent people's lives." Janet finally found her voice, asking the question that had haunted her for months. "Emma, how did you become someone capable of hurting your own family this way?" Emma's mask slipped completely as she responded with chilling honesty. Family is just another vulnerability to exploit. Foster's success made him a valuable target. Your guilt about favoring him over me made you perfect accomplices. Love makes people stupid and predictable. Her casual dismissal of our family bonds was exactly what federal prosecutors needed to demonstrate her complete lack of remorse and high likelihood of reoffending. She'd revealed herself as someone who viewed all relationships through the lens of potential criminal exploitation. The conversation ended when Emma noticed subtle signals that suggested law enforcement presence. "Something feels wrong here," she said, gathering her papers. "Foster, if you're trying to record this conversation or involve authorities, remember that I have detailed plans for destroying everyone you care about." FBI agents entered the dining room before she could leave, placing Emma under arrest for federal charges, including wire fraud, identity theft conspiracy, and interstate transportation of stolen property. Her shock at being outmaneuvered was evident as agents read her Miranda rights while securing evidence of her criminal admissions. Simultaneous raids in California, Nevada, and Arizona led to arrests of Marcus Webb, Brianna Martinez, and 4 other associates involved in their criminal network. Federal agents seized computers, forged documents, and financial records that provided evidence of crimes spanning multiple years and dozens of victims. Emma's conviction came 11 months later after a trial that exposed the full scope of her criminal enterprise. Testimony from victims across 4 states painted a devastating picture of families destroyed by her manipulation techniques. The federal judge sentenced her to 15 years in prison, with Marcus Webb and Brianna Martinez receiving similar terms for their roles in the conspiracy. During the sentencing hearing, I testified about the emotional destruction Emma's crimes had caused our family and the dozens of other families she'd targeted. The judge noted that Emma showed no remorse even when confronted with evidence of her victims' suffering. The defendant treated family bonds as weapons to be used against innocent people, Judge Patricia Morrison said during sentencing. Her crimes represent a particularly cruel form of betrayal that strikes at the foundation of trust that holds families and communities together. My parents faced the devastating reality of their daughter's true nature, but found redemption in helping federal investigators identify other victims and recover stolen assets. Harold entered therapy to process his guilt about enabling Emma's crimes, while Janet began volunteering with fraud victim support groups. Their willingness to cooperate fully with federal authorities helped prosecutors recover over $400,000 for previous victims. Though many families never fully recovered from the financial and emotional damage Emma's crew had inflicted. Harold found new employment through professional connections. I helped arrange accepting a position with reduced responsibilities but adequate compensation for their needs. Janet's volunteer work with fraud victims became a source of healing, channeling her guilt into helping others recognize and recover from similar manipulation schemes. My relationship with my parents slowly rebuilt on a foundation of complete honesty and clear boundaries. We established regular family counseling sessions to process the trauma Emma's crimes had caused and develop healthier communication patterns that could prevent future manipulation. Sarah stood by me throughout the entire ordeal, though the experience changed our relationship in ways that ultimately made it stronger. She'd seen how criminal manipulation could infiltrate even the closest families, and understood the importance of maintaining individual identity within committed relationships. My business reputation actually improved when clients learned about my cooperation with federal authorities in exposing financial crime. Several new clients specifically sought my services because they'd heard about my integrity during difficult circumstances. 2 years after Emma's conviction, I established the Crawford Family Security Foundation, a nonprofit organization that helps small business owners and families protect themselves from identity theft and family-based fraud. The foundation provides education about manipulation techniques and supports victims of financial crimes. Our first major project was developing educational materials for parents. about recognizing signs that adult children might be involved in criminal activities. The program helps families balance love and support with appropriate boundaries that prevent enabling criminal behavior. Sarah and I got engaged 18 months after Emma's trial, having learned that genuine love requires honesty, trust, and mutual protection rather than blind loyalty. Our relationship survived Emma's attempts to destroy it because we maintained open communication and refused to let external manipulation drive wedges between us. My parents attend our foundation events, regularly sharing their story with other families who've experienced similar betrayals. Their willingness to speak publicly about their mistakes helps other parents recognize manipulation tactics before criminals can exploit family bonds. Emma remains in federal prison with minimal contact from our family. I send her basic updates about major life events, but maintain strict boundaries that prevent her from gathering information that could be used to manipulate others. She's expressed no genuine remorse and appears to view her conviction as a temporary setback rather than consequences for devastating other people's lives. The foundation has helped over 200 families identify and protect themselves from similar schemes, proving that even the most painful experiences can become sources of strength when channeled toward helping others. Looking back, I realized that Emma's betrayal taught me the difference between love and enablement. True family loyalty means protecting innocent people from those who would exploit family bonds for criminal purposes, even when those criminals share our blood. The most valuable lesson came from understanding that some people choose to become predators, and our love cannot save them from the consequences of those choices. But we can honor the innocent people they targeted by ensuring their crimes serve a greater purpose in protecting future victims. Justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about transformation. Emma's crimes destroyed one version of our family, but they also created opportunities for us to build something stronger based on honesty, accountability, and genuine protection of those we love. The Foundation's work continues expanding to help more families recognize and prevent criminal manipulation. Every family we protect validates the painful choice to prioritize justice over misguided loyalty, proving that even the deepest betrayals can generate positive change when we refuse to let criminal behavior go unchallenged. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right, even when that choice meant losing someone you once loved? How do you think families can balance supporting troubled members while protecting themselves from manipulation and abuse? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my story and allowing me to share this difficult chapter of my life. If my experience helps even one family recognize and protect themselves from similar manipulation, then the pain of losing Emma will have served a meaningful purpose. Please like this video. If it resonated with you, subscribe for more real stories about overcoming family challenges, and share this with anyone who might benefit from understanding how criminal manipulation can infiltrate even the closest relationships. Together, we can build stronger families based on genuine love rather than exploitation. I hope you find the courage to make difficult choices when protecting innocent people requires standing up to those who would use your love against you. And remember that true family means supporting each other through accountability and honest communication, not enabling destructive behavior through blind loyalty.